Yes, start recording. Hello, cult members, and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
We're going to be a hot mess. If you're on the video feed and you see what our background looks like,
this is our house torn apart.
We are totally doing the Bachelor thing. We have the computer and the camera on top of one of those wooden spool things from the...
We got milk crates everywhere.
Milk crates everywhere. We are in the middle of a move, and so it's just a hot mess. But this is going to be our Game of Thrones, Episode 3, Season 8, Battle of Winterfell. If they don't call it the Battle of Winterfell, I'm going to have issues. This is going to be a full spoiler review, too. So
yeah, and I don't know how we're going to get through it. But
we're going to do our best to break it down. Let's break it up a little bit. Let's talk about the first... everything to the fire ring.
Okay.
And then everything that happens inside Winterfell, and then everything that happens in God's Wood. Because holy shit. Okay, so spoilers, and begin.
Okay, well, so we start off with the title sequence, and the ice has moved. It is now all the way down to Winterfell,
yeah.
Right? Which we knew everybody was there. We're ready to go. And then they, the first kind of scene is one long camera shot through.
And it's the pre-battle getting everything set up within the embattlements of Winterfell, but also kind of going on outside. But it's one continuous shot.
Yeah. So you see Sam and you see Tyrion and everybody's... grabbing swords, and Tyrion's running around with his breastplate on, even though he's gonna go to the crypts.
Well, he's ready.
Yeah. So Danny and John ride through whatever on their dragons, and then we see Ghost.
Yeah.
Ghost is out in the ranks
with Jorah and the Unsullied.
Dothraki.
Dothraki, Jorah, and the
Jorah's with the Dothraki.
Yeah.
Yep. So everybody, just tons and tons of armies, fighters, whatever. Everybody is outside, and then Melisandre walks up.
Just strolls into the middle of the battle. Hi, what's going on? Walks up to Jorah. Do you know their language?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. Why? Tell them to raise their swords.
Yep.
And she lights all the swords.
Yep. So all the Dothraki are inflamed.
That's the right word. Inflamed. Yeah.
They all have. So Davos actually lets her in, right? Into
he's the one that calls open
the gates. Let her in. So she comes on in and walks up to the little hallway thing that he's standing on that looks down
the catwalk
into the courtyard, and she tells him, you don't have to bother trying to kill me because I'll be dead by morning anyway.
Right.
Foreshadowing.
What does that mean?
Arya sees her, and
there was kind of a
gives her a look.
Yeah.
I partially because, of Gendry, because there's Jannaria now.
All right.
Yes. But also because they'd met before when Arya and Gendry were captured or being hauled around, whatever, by the Brothers Without Banners. And she told her, and this is important later, I see a darkness in you, and in the darkness, eyes staring back at me, brown eyes, green eyes, blue eyes you'll shut forever, and we will meet again. So, here they are, meeting again. And
what does that mean?
Arya has definitely shut some eyes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I'm wondering what the green eyes were.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch them all and really pay attention to everybody she killed. So then the Dothraki charge
into the night, and the night. The reason I say it that way is because it's freaking dark. There's no like it's a really cool line in the snow of light, and it's a differentiation between the light and the dark.
Yeah, the light side and the dark
light
side.
side and the dark side. And the Dothraki just take off, and there's this really cool shot of Dany and Jon on the hillside overlooking the battle, and all, what is it, 20,000 Dothraki?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
On horseback with lit swords take off.
Yeah.
And there's this beautiful shot with Winterfell in the background lit up with the fire, not the fire ring yet, but the fire. And the Dothraki charge into the darkness.
Yeah. And then kind of appear to be stood up by some invisible wall.
Invisible wall, yeah.
You can't see them. You assume it's the dead, but...
And you watch as all the lights go out from everybody else in the line's point of view. So it's Gendry and Brienne and Jaime and the Hound, and it's and Grey Worm. It's all of their perspective on eye level, on field level, and watching all of the swords, all the light in the distance go out. And all you hear is screaming and the lights go out. It's super creepy.
Yeah.
It's not the last creepy thing that we're going to have in this episode either.
No, and then it gets even creepier because then horses start coming back without people on them. And then you see Jorah come riding back through.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few Dothraki that come back, but mostly it's just empty horses.
Empty horses, and and then there's a pause.
Yep.
And that silence before battle was nailed in this episode.
And this is, at this point, you pointed out we're 20 minutes in, and we still haven't seen the foe yet. We haven't seen the foe,
and it's been all like creepy buildup. Like there's been very little dialogue. Everything's been very dark. Edison telling Sam, it's about time you got here. Oh, for Christ's sakes, it's about time you got here. Like calling him out for being late instead of being on the line with everybody.
Sam's like, I got stuff to do.
I had to get my stuff, and I was freaking out a little bit. But yeah, just that whole first 20 minutes of just eerie hanging over you cloud kind of thing was
tension build up, definitely. And so then the dead appear, they're here, everybody's fighting, everybody keeps, like, right as they rush in, everybody's going down. Again, building the tension of who's gonna die, right? And so you see Tormund get overrun and Brienne get overrun, and so
there's going to be an overwhelming feel from what I'm going to say a lot tonight about this episode is the dead felt like flooding water.
Yeah.
Like no matter what they did, they could not stop that flood of water coming in. And this was the first like instance of that.
Yeah. There's a couple scenes where it's definitely like water getting in.
Yeah.
And then Dany and Jon come in on the dragons and start burning everybody up. Yay.
Dany's line of when the dead have arrived from the trailer is used right then.
Yeah.
And they get on the dragons and they decide to go blow some stuff up.
Yep. Help them out. So then Jon sees the line of the generals that are all just sitting back there behind the battle. So he swoops in on Viserion.
Right.
Wait, no. Jon is on Rhaegal.
Rhaegal. Yeah.
And now I lost my place. But as he's trying to swoop in on him, like this storm starts
like a
hitting.
super hard, like not thunder snow kind of hard, but it's pretty pretty thick clouds, and it starts to snow.
Yeah.
And it's really cold. Like they made
like
a point of showing everybody's breath at times.
Yeah.
And in like side shots, they made a point of showing your breath is how cold it is.
And so this was weird because we weren't exactly aware that the Night King had control of the weather.
Right.
So
that's just me.
You are the Weather King. So we cut back to Arya and Sansa, and Arya takes out the dagger. Valerian steel dagger and gives it to Sansa and tells her to go into the crypt. And
I think it's dragon glass.
Oh, is it?
I think it's dragon glass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was
later on. Sansa pulls out a piece of dragon glass from her bot, so I think it's the dragon glass dagger.
Okay, that makes sense for later.
Yeah.
And tells her to go, to the crypt, and Sansa's like, I don't know what to do with this, and Arya says, stick him with the pointy end, which is
a
what
great.
John told her when he gave her needle. So then we see Theon in the Godswood, waiting and waiting and waiting. So then we have the Edmund Sam.
Edison and
Sam. Yeah. So Sam's on his back and he's about to get attacked, and then Edison stabs the zombie.
The white.
The white. And as soon as it happened, he's like, he's going to pay for that. And Sam stands up, and then Eddie gets
stabbed in the back of the head, I think.
So no, through the chest.
Oh, yeah, through the chest.
Yeah, through the chest. So we have our first casualty.
And I'm not surprised that he's the first to go. He's not really a mainline character, and killing a mainline character as the first major death kind of leans, softens the blow a little bit. Like, of course, Edison is the first to go.
Right. You want to keep the tension up.
Right.
Again,
right. But you need to have
Jamie? Is it going to be Rand?
You have to have some ramifications for this flood that's coming in to the line.
Right. So then John finally goes back to the Godswood because that was a thing they were talking about in the whole battle planning scenario was, you guys, if you're going to go protect Bran in the Godswood, you have to stay there. You can't keep, and the first thing they do when the battle starts is they take off. And it's like,
right.
One or the other, is Bran the most important thing or, So John did get back. That's good, So Arya saves the Hound. And I don't remember the scene now. I just have Arya saves the Hound.
Yeah.
I think it was the
So it's
fire?
right at the so the line is falling back and falling back and falling back, and the Unsullied are doing their very best to try to stop the flood, but it's not working out very well. And between the trench and Winterfell wall is the Hound, Beric, Jorah, Tormund, all them kind of like, and they finally light the trench, and fight. Like the plan was to have Dany come in and light the trench.
Well, this happens before.
Is that before that?
Yeah, because I have Arya saves the Hound, and then Grey Worm standing there, and he's watching the Unsullied fight and fight and fight.
Right.
And he's standing on the other side of the trench, and waiting. Like you can see he's conflicted, right? Because he feels like he should be out there with them, but then he's got to have them hold the line so that they can
help get everybody who is on the outside of the wall inside. Essentially, and the Unsullied are pretty much just being the cannon fodder. At that point in time.
I think he even tells them protect the retreat or something like that. Protect the retreat. And so then he breaks the breakable bridge, and then they're trying to light the trench.
Which was what Dany was supposed to be doing.
Dany was supposed to be doing it, but she can't see because of the storm.
Right.
She's up there flying around. She can't see. So then they start shooting arrows at it, right? But because of the storm, it's putting the flaming arrows out almost immediately.
Right.
So then Melisandre walks out and lays her hands on the breakaway bridge and starts doing her chant, and they've brought some Unsullied out to kind of protect her, and there's dead all over the place, and she's trying not to look over her shoulder while she's concentrating, and that was when I was like, oh, the Lord of Light does have a part to play.
Yes, he does.
In this final battle.
And we're like, oh, so this is going to be how they at least stop the whites from advancing, because they have this giant trench around Winterfell.
All the way around,
And it's now all of Winterfell is lit by the fire of the trench. And you're like, okay, cool. And she actually does something that doesn't involve burning children.
So then we have Tyrion, and we have like a major scene down in the crypts, right? So Tyrion,
kind of a deep breath kind of scene.
Yeah,
like we finally have a pause in the battle, so let's go down to the crypt and make sure everybody's okay down there.
Yep,
That's kind of how it felt.
Tyrion's drinking. He's like drinking in his
his
breastplate.
Breastplate, yeah.
You know, and everybody else is kind of like scared or whatever. He's walking around drinking. So he sits down next to Sansa, and they start talking. And Sansa, he wants to go out there and fight, and she's like, the only thing that will happen is you'll get turned into a white. And he says, I can think of no organization less suited to my talents.
Right, which is a great line.
Because he can't.
But
he dead.
feels like, I was at the Battle of Blackwater Bay.
Yeah.
And I've led a charge to stop at the Mudgate. I led a charge. I can do this. And Varys is the one who says, well, you lost almost lost half your face or whatever in that battle. And so, but it's his antsiness who wants to go out and do something, because they're just sitting there and listening to what's happening and not having a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's been,
And there's kind of a weird little exchange between him and Sansa. Like she says something to him, and, like they're having, she says, this is the most royal thing we can do, because he's like, I want to go out there. Right. And then she tells him he was her best husband.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
he kind of makes a joke about saying we should have stayed married or something along that line.
It was very interesting. And there's a little bit more of that a little later, but I mean, when you're talking about the two other husbands,
right,
said that's really a low bar.
Which I think he kind of takes as a compliment, a backhanded compliment at best.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And because he kind of takes a sip of his wine after that happens. Like, thank you, but I'm just gonna go back to drinking.
Back to the Godswood. Now we get Theon's opportunity, like Jaime did, to tell Bran he was sorry. And clear his conscience before the battle. And Bran basically says the same thing to Theon that he said to Jaime, that basically if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't be here now.
Right. Which is exactly what Theon needed to hear at that point in time.
And he tells him, you wouldn't have come home. And so that was kind of a, Bran knows, right? He knows how this is going to end. Right. So he was kind of giving him some closure, I guess. Something to feel good about, I guess. Okay, so now, at this point, everybody's still alive except Eddie. The Night King finds Jon. So the Night King has finally made an appearance. I think we're pretty much halfway through. And before he shows up. So now they start they have the battle, right? The dragon battle.
The Top Gun edition.
Dragon edition. Dragon edition of Top Gun. So that was pretty cool. Scene.
The Night King riding, I can't remember which one.
The Night King has
Drogon, and firing the blue flame at Dany and Jon, and them both kind of ducking and the air-to-air combat. But eventually, it's Viserion. No, it's Viserion, the one that Jon is riding.
Jon is on. Yeah.
They clamp onto each other and start just ripping at each other and pulling at each other, and finally Drogon rips the face, half the cheek off of Viserion, and kind of puts a kibosh on directing the flame, the blue flame.
Yeah.
In that whole process. And then it kicks the Night King off.
Yeah, in the struggle. I mean, I kept thinking the whole time, I'm like, how the hell do you hang on?
Yeah.
The dragon's going up like this. You don't have a saddle. Your arms have to be super tired.
Yeah, and Drogon gets beat up pretty bad, and they crash too. So now Jon and the Night King are on terra firma.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think Drogon took off, and the
I
Night
think
King
Drogon,
just.
yeah.
But Viserion kind of crash lands, and Jon goes flying off to the side, and so now they're all on the ground. Right. There was a scene where Gregor starts kind of freaking out because everything's on fire, right? They've backed all the way up to inside the castle now, and they're fighting on the walls, and everything's on fire, and he's losing his shit.
Right.
But Arya's kicking ass.
With her speary thingy.
Yeah, yes. So she's up there on the wall, and she's got it broken half, and she's stabbing and swinging, and then she puts it back together, and she's swinging, and Davos is standing up there in the corner on the stairs, just like watching.
Wow. All right.
You're pretty cute. And then I have a gnat. Lyanna Mormont.
So Lyanna and the Mormont family are in charge of holding the gate. And is this the giant scene?
Yes.
Okay, so they're holding the gate, and they're doing a really good job. They've let everybody in, and they put the gate back on, and they're holding it down. And so they have the inner gate, they have the outer gate, and then right inside they have those, I don't remember what they call them, but we call them
hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs is what we call them, with the dragon glass daggers attached to them and stuff like that. And so they're just holding their ground, and the door is locked. There's nobody coming in, and then the door gets blown up because it's one of the undead giants.
Right.
And there's a big exchange, and the whites are just running onto the hedgehogs and dying.
Yeah. They might be fast zombies, but they're dumb zombies.
They're dumb zombies, and they're doing a good job of holding their ground. And finally, the giant swings, hits Lyanna across the courtyard. She gets up and takes off after him. It's the smallest person on the field against the biggest person on the field, and the giant grabs her and squeezes her, like you could hear the crunching of her bones.
And her breastplate.
Breastplate is kind of crumpling and stuff like that, and he brings it up to to his face, and she pulls out dragon glass and stabs him in the eye, and he just crumbles apart and falls apart.
Yeah.
But she takes one for the team, taking out the giant. But now the door's open, and the Mormonts are getting decimated by the flood.
Yeah, they got. So then now Arya's in the castle, and she ends up in that library.
In the library, yeah.
And
now we're into the horror film part of this movie.
This is absolutely a zombie horror film because they're just everywhere. And she's, again, with the water, right? They're just like dropping out of the ceiling, and they're just coming from everywhere. And she's trying to duck and dodge and hide behind bookcases and everything.
And under tables and
then she ends up throwing a book, and they all, again, dumb zombies, they all go running off after it. What was that? So she makes a run for the door, but now they start crashing through another door, and then they crash through that door, and she's like about to get overrun. And then, so that was...
While that's all going on, you have Gregor leaning against the wall and just straight out just freaking out. Like he starts, Barrack is like, we need you in the fight. And Gregor is like, we can't win this fight. How can we win this fight? Look around us. Everybody's going to be dying. And Arya falls out of a door with the whites all over her, and Barrick's like, we need to save her. And that focuses Gregor finally that I need to save one person. And so they go help Arya.
Yeah.
Let's go to break.
Okay.
Let's while we're at this point right here, we're going to take a quick break because we need to refresh our water and figure out where we are in our notes, and then we will be
after these messages
from the Pop Culture Cult. Hello, cult members. Like what you've heard on this podcast? Then please subscribe and follow us here. You can also find us on Facebook at the Pop Culture Cult. We're on Instagram at PopCultureCult1, and we're on Twitter at Pop_Cult1. We're also on YouTube at PopCultureCult and on the Stardust app under PopCultureCult. Please help us by liking, following, and subscribing to everything we have. This helps us build a bigger and better cult of pop culture. And we're back.
Okay.
Meanwhile at Winterfell.
Winterfell. So they check back in the crypts. This is when they can hear all the screams. So like everybody's now in the castle and they're all just sitting there. So that kind of builds up the tension, right? Because there's nothing you can do. You're sitting in this room.
Right. You're just listening. And
Yeah. That was also a scene from the trailer, right? Where Viserys is sitting there. So now Gregor and Barrick are sneaking around. They're trying to find Arya, right?
Right.
They find her and a ton of whites, and that's where Barrick gets stabbed a bunch of times.
And this is the point where, Barrick has been saved 8 or 9 times or whatever it is in the show, and you kept wondering, why are you saving this one character?
Right.
Why?
He hasn't done anything major.
But they keep bringing him back.
Yeah.
And this is the point where you realize they kept doing that to have him save Arya.
Right. And so they end up in a room, and I think it might be the same room that in the last episode they were all sitting around the fire, Tyrion and Jaime and Tormund and all them. I think it's the same room. But they get in there, they drag Barrick in, bolt the door. Barrick dies, and then Melisandre is standing over by the fire. Random. And she said to him, I think it might have been right before he dies or whatever, she says, the Lord of Light
has saved you for a reason.
For a purpose.
And
now you've served your purpose. Yeah. And then she looks at Arya and she's like, I know you. And Arya's like, I know you. And they start talking a little bit. And Melisandre says, I told you once that you would close many eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, dramatic pause. And blue eyes. And then she says, what do we say to the god of death? And Arya says, not today.
And then runs off. And Gregor's like,
where are you going? Okay. We kind of jumped ahead.
Fine.
This is actually the dragon fight scene.
That's fine. That's cool. Whatever. Got to get to the good stuff.
Theon still is protecting Bran.
And the whites are starting to show up. Is that where we're at?
And Bran is warging. Like, they can see that they're coming, right?
Right.
And Bran's like, okay, and or Theon's like, okay, we got to get ready to fight, and Bran is warging.
I love his line. I gotta go now.
Whoop. So Dany saves Jon because he's on the ground now. So he's just fighting, and then she swoops in on Viserys and fire breathes the whole line and saves him. but she stays on the ground too long. I don't know what the hell she was doing. She stays on the ground too long, so now the dead are overtaking Viserys, and he's just like covered in dead, and they're stabbing him and stuff. So he's trying to shake him off, and he shakes her off. So now she's on the ground, and then he takes off. It's like, why didn't you just have him?
While this is all happening, Jon is running towards.
He's trying to get back into Winterfell, I think.
Well, he's running towards the Night King.
Oh, okay, right.
He's running the Night King. This is right before Dany comes in and fires everybody off. Jon runs across the field to try to get to the Night King.
Yeah.
And stab him in the back or fight him or do whatever. But he never gets close enough because the Night King realizes it, turns around and puts his hands up and resurrects everyone.
Yep.
Including the crypt.
Yep.
Which is what everybody has been saying online, that you gotta put everybody in the crypt where all the dead people at.
Right.
In the freaking crypt. But now Jon's in the middle of the field of all the new undead.
Right.
And the Night King turns around and walks off, and then that's when Dany comes in
and saves
Jon.
Yeah.
So she does actually care for him.
Yeah.
After everything that happened last week with the the true male heir to the Targaryen throne, to the Iron Throne.
Didn't really have time to touch on that this episode.
Right. But it was
little busy.
If there was some talk online that if she may not save him, she may love him, but she may not save him if he gets in a bad spot.
Right.
Well, she comes in and saves him when he's in a really bad spot, and then loses a dragon for it.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't, because Viserys survives.
Right.
But she gets knocked off her dragon, and now she's defenseless on the ground. Right?
In the middle of all the new undead.
New undead. And
it's the new undead.
The new undead, not the old new undead, because they're dead. So Jon makes it into Winterfell, and there's another one of those kind of panning shots, but it's each group, right? So you see Sam is laying on the ground fighting from his back, because that's what Sam does.
Does his best fighting from there.
Brienne is kind of backed up into a corner, so it's kind of a touch base, I guess, on where everybody
Jaime
is.
and Podrick are fighting side by side right next to where Brienne is, and they're all backed up against the wall, and Grey Worm's holding his own, but he's kind of getting overwhelmed, and my phone keeps going off, and
then they go back to the Godswood again. Bran is still warging, and Theon is just he's holding his own, and he's shooting arrows, and he goes to grab, and there's no more arrows. So now we're on our own with a bow and warging Bran,
who's been so helpful. Just sit there. Thanks.
And then that flashes back to Dany. So now she is defenseless on the ground. Jon's gone. Viserys is gone. She has no sword. She's about to get overrun by a white or whatever. Right. And Jorah saves the day.
Of course it's Jorah.
Yeah. So now they're fighting. She grabs a sword, finally, and they're fighting. Then we go to the crypts, which, surprise, surprise, are suddenly being overrun by a bunch of dead people breaking out of their coffins all over the place. And there is, it's a little bit farther from here, but there is the weirdest scene in that whole kind of flashback and forth to the crypts, where Sansa and Tyrion are like, they almost look like they're laying side by side on a crypt, but I think they were
tomb. They're sitting against the crypt, like kind of hiding.
The way they shot it, they look like those old effigies where they're laying on top of it.
That's totally what it was.
And I'm like, what is are we going to have like a relationship between Sansa and Tyrion after all this? And she pulls out the dragon glass. And then I'm like, oh my God, are they going to do a whole Romeo and Juliet thing?
I thought about that thing for a minute too. And I was like, no. no,
Yeah,
no.
what are we doing here? And then Tyrion's like,
Okay, let's go.
let's go, gotta go. So this is kind of the jump back and forth. Jorah's getting stabbed. We're with Danny and Jorah.
He's holding his own, but they're getting overrun.
He's losing. Tyrion and Sansa are now running. They run into Varys and the kids, like hiding back here, and they kind of look and they keep going. Theon is still fighting. Bran is still warging.
The Ironborn are holding their own, but they're getting picked off one by one.
Yeah.
But Theon's the one who's just wrecking shop.
Yeah, there's like just a circle of dead bodies
of dead
around
whites
him.
around him. Yeah, because he's doing such a good job.
Jorah's down, Tormund's down, Brienne's losing. This is kind of a low, everybody's starting to lose, everybody's being overrun. The Night King finally shows up at Godswood. So it's the Night King and all his generals, and they're at the entrance to the Godswood, and Bran decides to come back, thanks. And
Where have you been?
where have you been?
We'll get into that in a minute.
And
He tells
Theon,
he calls him a good man.
you were a good man, and thank you.
And thank you. I forgot about the thank you thing. Yeah.
And so then Theon goes, okay,
and does a suicide charge at the Night King.
Yep.
From across
The Godswood, yeah.
across
he's
the
like,
Godwood, like you get, and the Night King just stands there stoically, and Theon gets in range, and he grabs the end of the spear, breaks it in half, and stabs Theon in the chest with it.
Yep.
Now, I've known for a long time that Theon was going to die protecting Bran.
Yeah, they made it, I thought, pretty obvious.
Obvious, but that was his redemption story for everything he did to Bran and Starks and taking Winterfell and everything that's happened to him. Him saving Bran and fighting for Bran for the Starks at Winterfell and dying a hero's death was his redemption story.
Yep.
And so he gets redeemed, especially since Bran tells him, "You're a good man." I think as soon as he says you're a good man, I think you could kind of see it in Theon's face, like, it's it's time.
And everything else is, it's all looking pretty bleak at this point. Jon's doing ducking and diving, just trying to stay away from Dragon, because he's just
spitting fire in every which direction.
Blue fire everywhere, and
he's pinned down essentially.
Jorah's being stabbed, and the Night King is here, and the Night King finally gets from all the way over there to Bran, and Bran's just looking straight ahead. He's sitting this way, and the Night King's walking up like this, but he's been walking for 3 minutes or whatever, and he gets over there
4.5 hours.
It's like the Monty Python.
Yeah.
And Bran turns around and almost has this surprised look on his face, like,
"Oh, hi.
When did you get here? He just killed Theon."
Were you not paying attention?
And you wanna.
So as it's looking bleak and there's everything going wrong, and the Night King is standing over Bran, no words are exchanged because the Night King doesn't talk. I wanted him to really say, "Hi, Bran," or "Hello," or something. I'm
or Three-Eyed Raven or something.
Three-Eyed Raven.
Some
I'm
kind
here
of
for you or whatever.
Yeah.
And they pan back to all the generals, and it's just a side view, and one of their hair kind of wisps, like it got blown or whatever, and he kind of looks over his shoulder like, "What happened?" And they are the Night King goes to grab his sword, and as he goes to grab his sword, something from behind him jumps up, and he turns around, and it's Arya in midair with
Spider Monkey,
with the dagger.
The Valerian steel.
The Valerian steel dagger, the one that they tried to kill Bran with,
with,
that
yeah.
Littlefinger had. It's the circle of life.
Yep. They tried
and-
to blame on Tyrion.
and Tyrion and everything, and the Night King catches her by the throat.
Yep.
And now, and she can't. She's got it in her right hand, no, her left hand, because she's a lefty, and he's holding her at range, and like we're like, oh my god, you're gonna kill off Arya, and
like, no.
and then something happens, and she drops the dagger. Like she did in the fight with Brienne last season inside the crypt or inside the courtyard, the keep of Winterfell. She catches it and stabs him, and he evaporates in the snow.
Woohoo!
And so is Arya, who is the one who kills the Night King. Now, there's been all kinds of theories that Arya is going to be the one who could do it because she's the one who could sneak up on him.
Yeah.
And then they made this spear for her. And so they were thinking maybe she can hit him with a spear, like he had hit the dragon, Viserion.
He used that like ice javelin,
or whatever. But it's a throwback to the fight. Like that fight was important for all kinds of different reasons with her and Brienne.
Yeah.
But that move specifically, they made a point of showing like she's learned that you can, move from, change elevations as a fighter concept. And she changed elevations to stab, and all of everything, the generals, the whites, everything, everybody just collapses.
Yep. There's just piles of bones and armor and
bodies
dust
and just stuff and just everything. And as all the whites and everything falls, you get to see where everyone was standing. So you see Jaime, Brienne, and Podrick all against the wall, and you see Sam laying on the ground, and you see Grey Worm also kind of backed up to a wall, and you see everybody. You see Jon finally had pretty much given up the ghost. He decided that I'm done trying to dodge and dive and duck and dodge, and so he was like
standing up.
He was standing up, ready to like burn me because I'm not coming back as a white kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just everybody collapses.
Yeah.
And there's no words. There's music, but it's very like low key music and stuff. And
and so I was just thinking about that. By the end, we don't know where Gendry is, and we don't know where Tormund is.
I don't specifically remember them showing them, but they also didn't show them getting killed. So
it's just just a thing. So we go back to Dany and Jorah. Everything, all the whites and all the zombies are dead, and then Jorah dies, and so now Dany's very sad. She's
her backup hand.
Her hand number 2, not number 3 or number 1. Dany's dragon's the only one left, right? The only dragon that's left.
Right.
And then we go to the final scene, and it's Gregor and Melisandre walking out of Winterfell, and he kind of stops. Like, he just needed to get out and have a moment.
And he starts looking at all the bodies.
Looking at
like
everything, and but she keeps going. And she grabs the choker that's been keeping her young. We saw her kind of turn a couple seasons ago into the crone. But she grabs it and pulls it off and throws it on the ground and just keeps walking and walking and walking. And she starts, you can see her turning old from the back. Her hair turns gray, and then she's all shriveled, and so her clothes fall off, and then she just turns to dust and blows away.
And as that's all going on, Davos is following her out, and he's got his hand on a sword or something like that. Like he's going to go do what he promised to do, which was kill her.
Yeah.
And he stood, so he was the one that witnessed her. And as she's walking off, the sun is rising over the mountains in front of her, but in the distance.
It was a little bit of a weird.
It was almost like it was almost,
she's into the. Everything in the house is
apparently
going off.
Everything is going off. It's the apocalypse, everyone.
It was almost like she knew, right? So she's the big Lord of Light. The Lord
Right,
tells
right,
me, and
right.
so I go have small children burned. So like she knew that she had a couple things she needed to get done, and one of those was set that thing on fire, and the other one was to remind Arya about blue eyes.
Blue eyes, right?
And then
yeah.
her mission was accomplished, and then she could die.
Right.
I guess.
Right. Her story has ended. The thing I'm thinking of right now is the battle against the magic of the undead and the Night King. Is that story is over, and so now we are at the fight for the Iron Throne part of the story.
Right.
So the fight has always been for the Iron Throne. Oh, by the way, this is army of undead
Right.
and dark magic,
Right.
essentially. And so all the magic stuff is all gone.
Right. And I was thinking about that before we started recording, and it's like we still have 4 episodes.
3.
3 is
But
only
they're
6.
all three are like this one. They're all
Really
big.
long.
Yeah.
But like the Night King and the undead are gone. So now
Right.
we're just talking about going against Cersei.
And going to King's Landing against the Golden Company.
Right.
And who's left in the north that's going to fight with Dany and go unseat Cersei and try to siege King's Landing?
Right. There's not a whole lot of people left. I mean,
most of Dothraki are gone and most
Yep.
of the Unsullied are gone.
Yep.
That's
and
half of her. Well, that was most of her army.
she only has one dragon.
Right.
So-
Although she has one dragon.
Right. That's one more than Cersei, and Cersei
Right.
doesn't have any
And
elephants.
in the intro stuff, they keep showing that crossbow
yeah.
shooting the dragon in the keep
In the keep, yeah.
King's Landing.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting. They keep showing that. So we lost Edison, we lost Theon, we lost Jorah,
Yep.
and we lost the head general for the Dothraki, whose name I don't think they ever really say on screen, but they make a point of showing him again as a white.
As a white, yeah.
But they don't show any of the others coming back to life as a white, like Edison and stuff like that.
No, they did.
Did they show Edison? They showed
Yeah,
they showed
they
Lyanna.
showed Edison, and they showed Lyanna.
Oh, they did. They
Yeah.
did. I remember Lyanna. And we lost Lyanna Mormont, so the Mormonts are off the board.
Yeah,
So
more
all of-
months, I think, got wiped out.
And so, I'm interested to see, because we really didn't get a resolution with Jon and Dany, so that has to be dealt with.
Right, although in the scenes from next week, you see the two of them standing together. Like on a balcony or something.
Yeah.
Talking to the masses. Now, there was houses that refused to come fight, houses from the north that refused to come.
Hearth.
No, they're dead.
Right, they're all
But there was, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
there's
there
a
was
couple that-
that so they can maybe get them. I don't know what they're gonna do.
But everything we've been working for the last 2.5 seasons has been the fight with the Night King.
I know.
And
It's almost anticlimactic now. You're like,
It is, but I find it very interesting that I liked what they did. The episode's really, really good. I actually think it's on par with last week. We're gonna, as soon as we get done, I'm gonna edit and we'll go watch it again. It was a straight on. My phone is blowing up. It was a zombie movie. It was a straight out horror film for half of it.
Yeah.
And then it was, Gladiator or Braveheart, for a part of it too.
Yeah.
And it leaves a big gap in the story now.
Yeah.
There's a huge gap in the story. And so I'm wondering, with 3 episodes, how
right.
do they
What
feel,
are they gonna do? How is that
right.
gonna? Yeah.
How are they going to not explain it away, but explain like now what kind of thing?
And Cersei still hasn't seen. I mean, she saw one,
Right.
but they don't know what they just went through.
And who's going to be excited to go fight another fight at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
we still have Braun out there with the crossbow.
Yeah.
and we still
Yeah.
have I'm trying to think of what else is going on. You got the Golden Company. You have Braun out there with the crossbow.
Well, you have I mean, you've got a lot of little players, right? You've got the Many Faces guy.
Oh, yeah.
There's somebody over in Esros too.
And Yara on the Iron Island.
on the island. So yeah, there's some
interesting pieces in play that aren't directly in the scope of everything right now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how Yara's going to take Theon, dying and stuff like that. But Sansa and Tyrion.
Yeah, are we shipping
that? Is that a thing?
Syrian? Tansa?
Tansa. It's totally Tansa. You have Gendry and Arya. You have Tansa. So I'm just like, if they do unseat Cersei,
who
and you have Jon and Dany. So you have all these power couples all set up around each other.
Last season, go back and rewatch our things from last season. We were saying Gendry is the king who's promised.
The princess promised.
The princess promised.
Yeah, Gendry's the princess promised. So there's probably a lot more to talk about in this episode, and I think that the guys at Casterly Talk will have a 4-hour show to talk about everything that happened, both ramifications of what happened, but also stuff that was set up in this episode, and just the battle itself. I mean, I could just spend an hour talking about just the battle and how they did things, and they did everything right, and it was still a flood of undead coming in.
Well, anyone who's ever died is coming after you.
And as soon as the Night Kings are raising his hands, I'm like, okay, so now you have a fresh army again, and that's the problem going after, trying to fight that army in a heads up fight. So a whole bunch more to be talked about with this episode, and we'll probably spend some time about it this week on the regular show, and Avengers making $1 billion. So let us know what you guys think. Leave us a comment. Follow us on all the other different things. If you heard in the commercial, we're on social media and all that kind of different things. So until next time, cult members, winter has come and passed. Good night now.